So what I like to do with these, once I install these, my clamps and my hardware on the wall, is what I do is I modify the little gasket. And the reason for that is this gasket's not made really square, and the only way you can get it in is to either install it prior to putting a screw through the hole in the back of the clamp, or what I like to do is just cut a little horseshoe notch, and that allows me to simply loosen up this screw just a little bit, and then I can slide the gasket in like such. And we use these gaskets to adjust, so if this panel isn't perfectly square when you drill a hole, the holes might not be perfectly in line. It's a soft material, so even if you're off half the thickness of this gasket, you won't have you'll have good alignment, but it won't be 100% perfect. So we can use these gaskets to do a little bit of modification to the angle of the shower door. It could be that the tile is sticking out a little further on one side of the curb than the other, and even though you measure it and drill it what you think would be perfect, the tile itself isn't perfect, so that creates a problem with the alignment also. So with the perfect gasket, you'd be able to get a perfect job a lot easier than using this type of gasket. This gasket is poorly designed, and it's a problem for any installer when we use these gaskets to align them perfect with the clamp. It takes a little bit more time, and they don't allow you the adjustability as a custom gasket would. So anyway, I just slide them in like this, and then put the screw through the back. And then put the cover on the front. Before we put the cover on the front though, we're going to put a setting block in, and that's kind of a cushion for the glass to set on. So the way we do that is we have a little tiny setting block, and that's just a clear plastic block. It's 1/8 of an inch thick. We like to use an 1/8 inch thick for the clearance between the glass and the floor. So we'll cut a couple little pieces, and what I do is I put a little bit of caulking into the channel itself underneath the glass. There's a little space in the cutout. I'll put a little bit of caulking in there to make sure that water doesn't leak, and then we just slide the setting block underneath inside the cutout, and then I just kind of reach around, maybe fill the cavity a little bit more. We like to get the cavity nice and full with caulking so that never leaks water, and the more full that you fill it, the less likelihood of it ever leaking water. So then you just tightly align your screw with your plate. And the problem with these gaskets is because they're cut crooked, it's very difficult to align them and make them perfect. So it takes a little bit of work to make them perfect, and a lot of times you can't get them 100% perfect because they're not square, right? And the clamp is pretty much perfectly square. The clamp doesn't have any sufficient outage to make them not square, whereas the gaskets are cut. They use a cheap processing method to make the clamp, and then, or actually the gasket, and then the gasket's not perfectly square. I'll show you a close-up of the gasket on the back of the clamp, and you can see that see the gasket, see how that's cut? It's cut at an angle, so that angle would actually attract water as opposed to kind of, not only water, but what happens is the calcium and the soap and everything that comes down the glass is going to build up here. It's going to be kind of like an ugly, gooky stuff, right? And it's not going to go away just by looking at it. But it will give you a feeling that your shower is very dirty by just looking at it. And it's something that's always going to be there. A better gasket would be one that is designed where when we put it in, it actually extends up past that edge, and then when you're done, you just take your razor blade and cut it off. And that would be a lot better gasket. Something that I think is a great improvement over the installation method that we use for these ones, because a lot of times these ones, even because they're not straight anyway. So when you're tightening up a screw or someone's holding the gasket in place, depending on the tile work and the clamp itself and tightening of it, you know, a lot of times the clamps are far away, so you're reaching way, you know, instead of this panel being just 20 inches wide or whatever, it's way over here, so there's no way that I can reach that one. So what I have to do is put a piece of tape on this side and hold that clamp in place. The gasket itself is warped, kind of like a potato chip is warped. It's not very flat. So when I go to tape it against the glass, it's difficult to get it taped solid against the glass. And then when you put the screw and the gasket and the clamp on the other side, when you go to tighten it up, it's still, you're tightening up two pieces that are warped. And when you're tightening it itself, sometimes that little gasket moves. And being that it moves, you try to straighten it out and tighten it, and it's a game because you're tightening up something that you can't reach on both sides and hold that gasket. You have to hold the gasket straight on both sides and tighten the screw at the same time. And you don't have the screw in the gasket isn't perfect, so it's kind of like a game. You're sitting there trying to do it and doing the best. So what happens is a little bit of the gasket ends up sticking out on the side and you just cut it off with a razor blade. It's not a big deal, but when you're installing 16 clamps a day or 20 clamps a day doing 2 installations, it ends up that this is a chore that is definitely not needed. By changing a part that only cost a penny to making it into a better design, it would save a lot of frustration and projects would go a lot faster. So now I got this clamp, this is on the wall, and then I'll install the hinges. And the hinges are easy to install onto the fixed panel. We just got a back plate, we got a couple screws. We're going to make a little alignment very quickly. And we're going to install a couple screws in there and tighten them up, and then your hinge will be on the door, or on the fixed panel, should I say. So this is the fixed panel. And it's easy to install these. But you got to be careful with your fingers. Make sure that you don't. You got to be hand and eye coordinated. Make sure you don't scratch that hinge because they will scratch. And so we install the hinge into the cutout, or place it in the cutout. And just put the little screws in the little holes, making sure that they align and that the gaskets align. The same thing with these gaskets. They're not the best designed gaskets, so they fit in there pretty good. And they work, but whoever designed the gasket, they merely did a design job and put the stuff on the market. They didn't troubleshoot it to see if there was a way that they can make that gasket better. So although they've been on the market for 25 years, they've never taken or seized the opportunity to make it better. So there's an opportunity to make this gasket better, to make it hold tighter. And if it did hold tighter, you'd have less adjustments. And for me, I'm out of Hayward, right? If I drive all the way to San Jose, you know, in Christmas time, that's a 2.5 hour trip over and back to change, you know, to tighten up a couple screws. So, you know, one little penny change would improve, you know, it would improve a lot of stuff for the installers because we don't like going back and doing an adjustment. We tighten these screws down. These hinges actually come with 2 types of screws. They come with an Allen screw. They include a small pack of Allen screws. These are Allen screws in here with a little Allen key that comes in the kit. The Allen screws actually tighten down. For me, they appear that they tighten down quite a bit tighter than the Phillips head screws. So I put these. I use the Phillips heads on this part, and then I use the Allen head on the door part. It's the door that normally would move. The fixed panel very seldomly moves. It's not as much problematic when it comes to moving. With the door hinge being swinging, it's the one that always moves. In this situation, on this door, it's going to be a glass-to-glass door. The panel, there's going to be a small panel on this side and a door right in the middle. And in this situation, the gap between the door and the fixed panel is going to be minimal. So it'll be maybe a 32nd of an inch gap between those two panels. If this hinge moves at all, if it moves a 32nd of an inch, that means when the door closes, the door is going to close and hit the seal on the edge of the fixed panel. And that'll be an adjustment for me to come back. So on the door side, I'm going to use these Allen screws, and that'll get those nice and tight. And then I shouldn't have to worry about this at all whatsoever. So that's the installation of the hinge onto the fixed panel. And now we are prepared to install this large panel. And that'll be the next step.